It's time for another Out and About with Jamie Grout podcast, and this is a best of Out and About with Jamie Grout. We thought we'd replay this because this is a really good podcast with former Saturday Night Live alumnus Gary Kroger, who was a cast member in the 1980s with people like Eddie Murphy. He was there with Martin Short, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and so many other great people. And he tells some great stories. And he went back for the 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live, too. And we think you're going to enjoy this. Of all the video shortcasts that we have done with people who have been on the Out and About with Jamie Grout shortcasts, this is the most viewed. I think it's racked up nearly 300 views on our YouTube channel and also on the Out and About with Jamie Grout.com website. So check it out. This podcast, it runs nearly 30 minutes, and I think you're going to find it enjoyable because Gary tells some great stories of all the people he's interacted with and known through Saturday Night Live, and how he was picked to be on the cast of Saturday Night Live, and how he feels like he'd won the lottery when he did that. First of all, a word from our sponsors, including Wesley Life, Park Center. My sister lives at Park Center in Newton, and they've taken great care of her as she continues to fight Parkinson's disease. And on their website, they say you can feed your soul at Park Center. They have all kinds of lifestyle options, a full continuum, independent living, assisted living, short-term rehabilitation, memory support, and long-term care. Give them a call at 641-791-5000 at Park Center. That's 641-791-5000 at Park Center. Newton Clinic, summer sports are just around the corner. Make sure your child is game day ready with a sports physical at Newton Clinic. Call or text them at 641-792-2112 to schedule today and skip the last-minute scramble. And Ryan's Tire and Auto on First Avenue in Newton. They take pride in delivering more than just tires and vehicle maintenance. They provide an unwavering commitment to great service every time. As a locally owned and operated small business, they understand the importance of building lasting relationships with their valued customers. Their team of dedicated professionals is passionate about automobiles and is committed to going the extra mile for you. They're proud to serve their community with a level of care, expertise, and dedication that only a hometown business can offer at Ryan's Tire and Auto on First Avenue in Newton. It's time for another edition of Out and About with Jamie Grout, and I am super excited to be talking to my old friend Gary Kroger. I haven't spoken to him in a long time. We used to run into each other occasionally when I lived in the Waterloo Cedar Falls area. Had him on the air with me when I was on Mix 96 here in town, and I think my former boss Jim Koloff was a little ticked at me because I maybe played one or two songs when I had him on the air with me because he told so many great stories about his days on Saturday Night Live as an alumnus on that show. We had Tim Kazurinsky on with us on the phone. Yes. And I am excited to kind of rehash this because this year is the 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live, and he was in the audience, and I'm so darn proud of him for getting on stage.
I sure did.
Between Paul McCartney and Lorne Michaels, and I posted the picture on Facebook this morning of it. Gary, before we get to the SNL stuff, I want to know, now, were you in theater in high school?
Oh yeah, I was obsessed. I was that guy. I was the guy that had to be involved in some way or another in every show. It's what I wanted to do.
Were you always interested in theater, even as like a little kid?
Well, yeah, I can't think of a time. I wouldn't have called it theater when I'm 3, 4, 5, and 6 years old, but I enjoyed entertaining. I would watch Red Skelton. I loved Barney Fife on the Andy Griffith Show. I loved Dick Van Dyke.
Sure.
So those were sort of my role models.
I met Dick Van Dyke.
You did?
I was an extra in the movie Cold Turkey.
I met Dick Van Dyke on Cold Turkey too, but I was just some schmuck little kid that went down there to watch them film, and I got his autograph.
Was it in Winterset or Greenfield?
Winterset.
Winterset. My grandma and grandpa were in Winterset, and I met him in Winterset and took pictures of him, and I was also an extra in Greenfield, because I had cousins living there. I was there for one day, but I was such a pain in the butt to my sister, who was also in Greenfield, that she called my parents to come get me and take me home.
Well, funny, we should talk about Dick Van Dyke, because thinking about role models or artistic role models.
Yes.
The Dick Van Dyke Show, of course,
Yes.
was huge, and it was something that we sat down to watch. But he was Bert in Mary
yes, of
Poppins, for
course.
heaven's sakes.
Yes.
And Chitty Chitty Bang Bang
Right,
was just
right.
as magical to this kid. So here he was, Dick Van Dyke. I cherished his autograph, kept it in my wallet that was eventually stolen, so I don't have it anymore.
Okay.
But Dick Van Dyke was that's what I wanted to do.
Sure.
I wanted to be a creative person who had a television show or something like that. The path is to do theater in high school. That's where you learn, you develop some chops. And then I went on to do theater at Northwestern, where I went to theater school. And then it's sort of a circuitous path to what became my career. But it all started in theater.
So from Northwestern, what did you go to? What, Second City or the Groundlings or what?
Second City.
Second City.
Well, you know, I'm trying to keep the Reader's Digest version of this because in real time it would take hours, it would take days to tell the story. But I went to theater school, just major in theater at Northwestern. And it's a great reputation.
Yes,
Everybody
it does.
would say, you got to go to Northwestern. Well, my humble and parents of modest means, we cobbled together a way to send me to a very expensive school. And I had work study and I took jobs at night and in the morning. We found a way to do it. But very quickly, the traditional theater education wasn't appealing to me. And not that it wasn't snobbishness. I didn't think that I was above it. It just wasn't speaking to me. But I stumbled across other people who were sort of out and about around the fringe of it as well, like Brad Hall, Paul Barros, some names you don't know, Rush Pearson, and ultimately Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And we started doing our own theater, a kind of a renegade theater in the fringes of our time. It was called the Practical Theater. The Practical Theater, I was involved with Second City. Julia was on the Second City stage. We were involved in and around Second City. We eventually, this would be 1982, put on a show right next door to Second City, and we had their blessing. They really loved our brand of physical, cerebral comedy, which I'll explain in a second if you care. But we put on a show of all of our best sketches that we'd accumulated over several years, and we called it something like the 50th Anniversary Jubilee, which is somewhat coincidental since the 50th anniversary. But we called it, when we'd only been in existence about 3 years, our 50th anniversary. And in the beginning, it got Second City's spillover audience, people who couldn't get a ticket, that, oh, we'll go see these kids next door. Well, we became a local hit, selling out.
Wow.
This little space. It's now called the ETC space. If you're from Chicago, you know what I'm talking about. And we were a big hit, and our show was just getting rave reviews. I was hoping to get an agent. I was hoping maybe I'll get a commercial, make a couple $1,000s, make a little money. Then we heard that one night, this would be September 1982, Dick Ebersol and Bob Tischler were in the audience. Now, I'll give you some backstory to that. I'm doing the show, and I do have an agent eventually, and they said, hey, Saturday Night Live wants you to put some stuff on tape. I go, what? Just do voices or characters in front of the camera. Come into my office and we'll do it. I go, okay. So I did a bunch of weird stuff that I've never seen, and I guess it was set out there. Well, on the basis of that, I think Tim Kazurinsky came to check us out. And he went back and said, hey, you got to see this Kroger kid. Well, they came out and they liked all of us. Every one of us. They didn't like me any more than anyone else. Now, I may even have the story wrong, but that's sort of how I've been told, that they were checking me out, but they loved Brad Hall. They loved Julia. And Paul Barros was hired as a writer. So we ended the show in September, and I remember driving down Lakeshore Drive to our last show in Chicago with Julia, and it felt like we'd won the lottery.
Oh, I bet.
It did. It's just like,
Yeah.
It was never, ever, Jamie, my design to be on SNL. I would watch the show every Saturday religiously like everybody else in the dormitory, but I had no desire to do sketch comedy.
Wow.
None. The practical theater I enjoyed because we were doing political comedy that was still very physical, sort of guerrilla theater. We were social commentators, so I felt like we were doing something important. But then we found ourselves in New York as the new cast of SNL in 1982. And I hope it never sounds like sour grapes. That's the best part of the story. Mm-hmm. The anticipation of what it could be, because getting there, it was never what we had hoped. You know, we weren't really embraced by the other cast or the writers, not initially at least. And so it was really hard for us to find airtime and get any momentum at all. Brad left after 2 years. I managed to be there with Julia for 3 years. And I did feel in that last year with Billy Crystal and Marty Short and Chris Guest that I was becoming part of the ensemble, and I figured out how to do this now. Mm-hmm. I figured out how to write for television.
Were you also in the cast with Eddie Murphy or no?
Yeah, Eddie Murphy was there, and I'll go back a little bit. When we got there in 1982, we went into Dick Ebersol's office because Dick had taken over the show because Lauren had left. And he said, I want you to see what we've been doing. So he puts on these videos of Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood, Tyrone Green, all these Eddie Murphy characters, and a lot of them had Joe Piscopo. And I remember turning to Brad and Julia and Paul going, why are we here? This stuff is great. They don't need us. Mm-hmm. And Dick said more or less, Eddie is already starting to do movies, and we want to kick this show up again. We want to challenge him again. We want to go back to the beginning of what it was like in '75 when you had these renegade improv actors, and we're hoping that you guys can deliver that. Well, that's all the help we ever got. From then on, it was just sort of be left on our own. But we were there with Eddie Murphy, and we did learn how to do it over time. I mean, look at Julia's career now.
Sure, you bet.
I mean, she doesn't look back at SNL fondly, but she would say, hey, I learned a lot. It was graduate school for being on television. Mm-hmm.
Was Larry David involved at
Larry
that time?
David came in as a writer the last year, which was with Billy Crystal and everybody else, and Marty. He came in the last year from Fridays, but he never got anything on the air, and he was so frustrated. And he'll tell you the story, and I've seen him tell the story on talk shows. He was so mad that he quit during a show, realized what he had done, giving up a paycheck, and came back to work on Monday.
That's an episode of Seinfeld.
It's an episode of Seinfeld. Well, there's another episode of Seinfeld that I'll tell you about too, and this is an inside story that I've never heard anybody else tell.
Okay.
And maybe they can't because I was there. At the last show of the year, the wrap party, at the end of '85, Larry comes up to me and he says, I don't know if this should go out there.
This is a podcast. This isn't radio.
I'm going to kill Dick Ebersol tonight. And of course, I'm funny. That's funny. And he pulls out a little vial of clear liquid. And they said, I'm going to slip this. I don't know what he said it was. Cyanide. I don't know. Into his drink. He's drinking a gin and tonic over that side of the bar.
He's going to slip him a Mickey.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, how elaborate of a joke is this, Larry David, for you to actually put together the vial of liquid to say you're going to. And I said, forget it. But I watched him circling Dick, and I started thinking, what if this is real? Am I an accomplice now to a murder? And I remember leaving the party thinking, I should have said something, but I'm probably just being set up to look like a fool, so I just let it go. Well, obviously that no murder took place.
Right.
But then years and years later, do you remember the Seinfeld episode where George...
I do remember that, yeah.
Well, Larry is brilliant at lifting these things out of his odd perspective, but yet real life, and transposing them onto his scripts.
Sure. Very, very interesting. You have some great experiences to tell us about hanging out with some celebrities during your time with SNL. Tell us about Huey Lewis.
I can't go into detail with the Huey Lewis story, except to say that Huey and I shared a limousine at the end of a very long rap party.
Okay. That's all you can say?
That's all I can really say about the Huey Lewis story is, well, I watched him, make out.
Okay. Oh, you watched him make out.
Yeah.
Okay, that's about all you can say.
That's all I can say.
All right, because we were watching, MTV still plays classic videos.
Yeah.
And we record them, and this is one from the 80s. And so I was watching this with my sweetie, who I call Little Red because she's 5 feet tall and has red hair.
red hair.
And I said, Gary Kroger rode around in a limousine with that guy.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, and she's like, really? She was very impressed.
Well, we were the only two people and a couple of young women left at the bar at the end of a rap party. It's got to be 6:30 in the morning. Huey's got a limousine, and he took us all home.
Okay, could you tell us about your date with Megan Mullally?
Not very much about that either. No, I can't tell you. We went to see Steve Martin when he was just blowing up as the megastar, and he had the in Chicago an amphitheater. I mean, not an amphitheater. I forget what it was called, but it was a gigantic convention center, and he filled up the place. And the only thing that I'll say about this is I laughed so hard I peed my pants. All right, I'll tell you the story. I peed my pants.
Okay.
But I'm a poor college kid. I can't just throw away underwear. So I went into the bathroom and I took them off and I stuck them in my coat pocket. It was wintertime and I had a long coat and I stuck them in there. Now, if she ever hears this she's going to go, oh my God. So on the way back to the car, we never dated. We went on this one date.
Okay.
So, I mean,
it wasn't a big deal.
No, it wasn't a big deal. But I think she put her hand in my pocket to get her hand warm, and she said, "What's this?" And I quickly said, "Oh, it's an oil rag because my car. You saw it. It's an old car. It leaks oil." And that was the end of that.
And if you don't know who Megan Mullally is, you probably never
Will and
watched.
Grace.
Yeah, Will and Grace. She played Karen on that show.
Yes.
She was a great actress. So there were a lot of...
Well, there's Christopher Reeve. I can tell you a little Christopher Reeve story.
Please do, yes.
Nicest man in the world, and he was the host in '85, I believe. And we went out to dinner. We really became good friends. Okay. And we went out to dinner, and I told him that night at dinner, I said, Chris, when I was a little boy, I used to wear my Superman suit to school. Because I was a frail little kid, and I loved Superman. And when you're in second grade, you certainly think that you could be Superman. So if I put my suit on underneath my clothes, maybe somebody someday will accidentally see the S under my shirt, and the word will go out in the school that Gary Kroger is actually Superman.
How about that?
It's second grade logic, right?
Yeah.
Well, I also put my cape on, and it would bunch up in my pants.
Okay.
And so to one girl, and I'll say to this day, Julie Nielsen said, "Are you wearing a diaper?" Gary Kroger's wearing a diaper. So I went from the possibility of being outed as Superman to a kid wearing a diaper in second grade. It was so humiliating. Anyway, I told Chris that story, and he did a panel show, and I don't remember what it was, Live at 5 or whatever. And actors are so desperate for a good story to tell that he told the story as if it were himself.
Okay.
He stole my panel story. But I was never mad because I soon realized how difficult it is to have a story to tell. Okay. And the audience went, "Oh, that's the sweetest story." That's my story.
Why did you steal it?
He stole it because you're desperate, whatever. And he was still the nicest guy in the world.
Okay, we're talking about the nicest guy. Who was the biggest jerk?
Everybody thinks I'm going to say Robert Blake, and I am going to say Robert Blake, although I didn't actually think he was a jerk. I wrote a script when he hosted the show that was, I don't remember what it was called. Somebody said it was called The Breezy Philosopher or something. And all I remember is that he was a college professor with a cockatoo who knew everything. It was Beretta teaching college, but the cockatoo had all the information. And he took the script and said, "Want to know what I think of this?" And he wiped his ass with it.
Oh, dear.
And then he threw it at me, and allegedly it hit me in the face, right? I didn't mind. I just thought, okay, I guess you don't like it. And I thought, well, I guess I'm in the big leagues now. This is how they deal with stuff. I really didn't mind.
Really? Okay.
But it offended a lot of people in the room.
I see.
Because he was never asked back to do the show. And I've heard people tell that story about poor Gary Kroger having his script thrown in his face.
Sure.
So he's been branded as one of the big a-holes of the show, but I remember him being approachable, worked hard on the scripts, took it seriously, being somewhat affable, actually.
Well, I saw a documentary or something about, maybe the last 90 minutes before the first Saturday Night Live, and it all kind of came together chaotically, and also about the week leading up to Saturday Night Live. Was that your experience? Was it real stressful and people had to use the bathroom a lot because it was,
the movie Saturday Night sort of tells it in a condensed version of all the mayhem. It's just sort of squeezed together. All the mayhem was there, but maybe not quite so focused as it appears in like that movie or a documentary. But yes, because you come in on Monday with nothing, and by the end of Tuesday, by Wednesday morning, you've written the whole show. Then you read through the show. You really just met the host. And then the show is chosen and you've got Thursday and Friday to put it together. Sometimes you have a few things to do. Sometimes you have nothing. Somebody is always crying because their sketch didn't make it. And you really don't have time to work things out. It's a lot of pressure. If you're doing an impression of somebody that you've never done, you've got 2 days to nail this thing. Well, that's the exciting part, the challenging part, but it's also the part that'll drive you a little bit nuts. So it was always, and there's 24 of you, the writers and the actors, everybody is trying to carve out their career at the same time. So that precious airtime or getting your sketch on the air means a lot to you. That could make or break, in your mind at least, your career, your future. So that kind of tension every week in that 6-day window is pretty intense.
Well, if you had, was it hard for you not to take it personally when one of your sketches got cut, Gary?
Yeah, I didn't take it personally in that I never thought, I guess I'm no good. I always knew that I had talent. I always knew that I could write. I always knew that I could do things that were different.
Sure.
But the squeaky wheels get the grease. And I wasn't a squeaky wheel. In fact, my nickname was No Problem Kroger. I mean, something that you take pride in other lines of work, but No Problem Kroger meant that I could be excused, forgotten, put away for the squeaky wheels. Now, that doesn't mean I wish I'd been a squeaky wheel. I'm proud of the fact that I was No Problem Kroger. But I took it personally because I was easy to step on. I was easy to ignore.
Just let it go.
I let it go. But I can't say that it didn't hurt my feelings. I can't say that I didn't shed a few tears once in a while.
Yeah. Rejection is not easy to take, I'm sure.
And especially when it's rejection that everybody sees. I mean, when you go out if the person you're with is getting recognized and you're not. I mean, that seems trivial in my life now, like what a silly thing to get upset about. But when you're in the midst of it, and your friends are having their picture taken with fans, and you're not asked, those moments would destroy me. They would destroy me, Jamie. They would hurt badly.
I bet. So what was it like going to the 50th anniversary?
Well,
tell me all about that.
See, now I'm a grown man. It's all water under the bridge. I only look back thinking of the best of times and the opportunities of living in New York. And for me, it's going back to see old friends. I'm not particularly starstruck, but at the same time, you can't help but notice that, Chris Pine is going up the stairs and there's Oprah Winfrey, there's Tom Hanks, Alec Baldwin walks in,
how can you not be starstruck?
Hi, Cher. I mean, how are you not?
Well, and you sandwiched yourself at the end between
Well,
Lorne
here's where
Michaels
I'm
and Paul
so
McCartney.
much smarter than people think. I knew the game. Because I'd gone to the 40th, and I knew that everybody would get up on stage for the final goodnight that went to the show. So when it was time, I got up there very quickly. Now, I didn't intend to stand where I was. I'm telling the truth. But Marty Short was there getting ready to say the goodnights. He was alone. Now, Marty's an old friend from the show, and I hadn't seen him yet. So I said, hey, so we exchanged a few words, and I stepped up on stage, and I'm looking for Brad Hall, because Brad is there with Julia.
And he's married to Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
He's married to Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I knew Julia was coming up the stage, but there's Brad sitting in there, and I'm going, Brad, what are you doing? he's very modest and he doesn't embrace SNL exactly. And so he said, I don't want to go up. No, you have to. So he starts to come up. And then I notice that the red light is on in the camera, which means we're on air now. And as I saw Brad coming up, I noticed there's Lorne Michaels coming up. Paul McCartney is now to my left, and I'm right here. And I remember saying, I'm not going to move. Because I wasn't in the show, and I thought, if anybody stayed up this late that knows me, they now see me.
I remember you telling me that if you weren't in a skit while you were on the cast of Saturday Night Live, that you made it a point to get up front at the end of the show.
Because in an audience's mind, they're not counting your sketches, they're not counting your lines. They only know if they saw you or not. So the one thing I did do is I knew that I'd get up on stage, so I wore a red tie to a black tie event, only so that my wife and kids could find me in the crowd. But now Mr. Red Tie is right there front and center.
Yeah.
And to my point that the audience just knows if you're in the show. I didn't think anything of it really, except hopefully my family saw me. I get to the after party and my phone is blowing up. Kroger, we saw you in the show. People from Cedar Falls all over the country. Kroger, we saw you. And then they're screenshotting the picture and I'm going, oh my God.
Oh, you were right there.
I was right there. And it doesn't end there. The next day in the Times, in the New York Times, big page, there's that picture. It doesn't end there. I get back to Iowa and a page of the Des Moines Register is my face.
There you are.
From that picture.
Yeah. Well, you know, we couldn't be more proud. And I put it on my Facebook page the day after. And I'm so proud to know you. And
Jamie, you're too kind.
So proud that you were, that you made it to the cast. And you said, when you were chosen, it's like winning the lottery. And you never thought it would happen, and you never dreamed that you would be on the cast, and you did. I got to ask you, did you get together with Higgins at all, by any chance?
Two
Iowa guys.
No, we communicate, and his wife Ellen is a good friend.
Oh, okay.
I never get to see Steve more than, Steve, great show. Oh, thank you, Gary.
And that's about
all
it.
we have. But his brother, David, I talk to quite frequently.
And what is he doing now? Because I know he was on Ellen's show at one time, wasn't he?
He started there. He still acts. He still goes to Hollywood, but he lives in Des Moines now.
Oh, does he?
He went home.
Oh.
Basically, and he has a wonderful life. All the Higgins boys do.
Well, and I see him, Steve, on Fallon, of course, all the time. And he's a producer for SNL, I believe, also.
Well, he's been the head writer, and he's a producer, yes.
He's there also.
I would have pegged him to take over the show, but I'm not into the politics of that at all.
Okay, so what? Just briefly, we reminisced a little before we started the podcast. What are you doing now, Gary?
Well, I do whatever I want, and that's not to say that I am independently wealthy, but I have a couple of pensions from show business. I have, a sort of a semi-pension from 17 years in advertising, and I have Social Security.
Yep.
I repeat, I have Social Security.
Well, so do I.
Yes, and I'm married, and my wife works full-time, so I am very comfortably living, doing things to help abused children, a court-appointed special advocate, mentoring students, giving lectures, doing after-dinner speeches. I'm doing the keynote at the Mental Health Awareness Breakfast next month. I'm asked to do lots of things that are community-focused. I do dabble in politics. I did run for office. I was working for my son at Tropical Smoothie just because I love labor. Really, I love labor. And I was cutting carrots and slicing strawberries with the best of them. I'm not doing that anymore because my son is...
He wants to get into show business,
He wants to get into show business, too, and he's a brilliant musician. And so, my job in life now, and this is going to sound corny, it's to help facilitate other people.
Wow.
If I have some information, some ability, some connection, some knowledge that can help not only my kids, my family, but other people in the community or the larger community, that's my job.
God bless you.
Well, let me tell you this, Jamie. You have now bookended the two best interviews of my career. Because I came out here and I had the greatest time with you at my first interview when I landed here back here 22 years ago.
Well,
and now this has just really, really been fun.
Well, I wanted to get this interview, and I have not captured technology as some other podcasters have where they can do things over the phone or video or whatever. So I wanted to drive up here and get this done, and I have. And I know this is going to be a popular podcast. We're going to do a video here in just a few minutes.
Okay.
And it'll be a capsulized version of this. But if you have not heard the stories of Gary Kroger, make sure that you listen to this or watch the video on outandaboutwithjamiegrout.com, or check out Spotify, Amazon podcasts, along with YouTube, my own YouTube channel, or iHeart, any of those. You can check this out. Thanks again for chatting with us today, Gary.
Thank you.
My interview guest, Gary Kroger, Saturday Night Live alumnus. This podcast also sponsored by Jersey Freeze in Monroe. Head down there and get a delicious ice creamy treat. Lynette Baker, Halo Branded Solutions, along with Free Classified Weekly, Westside Java Coffee Bar, and Advantage Credit Union.
Is your bank slamming its way through your finances by charging monthly fees? Blow the whistle on those foul-saving rates and bounce into Advantage Credit Union. At ACU, we'll treat you like you own the place, because you do. We offer great rates, fewer fees, and you'll actually earn interest instead of paying a fee. If you live or work in Jasper County or 18 other counties in central Iowa, you're eligible to join. Open your account today in Newton or online at acuiowa.org.
Local money, local decisions, local service, and locally owned by you. Insured by the NCUA.
Until next time, out is out. See ya.